Hey y'all, it's time to make something with our Pony Jig. This is a great scrap clay project. So you're going to go ahead and download our template from our website and then get everything cut out, put your texture in, and we're going to apply cornstarch as a release agent for our jig. So we're going to rock the clay up onto our jig, and at this point, I like to leave a lot of extra at the top, especially on the pony jigs and projects like our nesting mugs or our nesting bowls, because we're going to do a little bit of sculpting here. Now you'll see one of my ends come in just a little lower because this is a scrap piece, but I'm going to use that for a design element later on. So make your adjustments here, shave off what you need to, following your same bevels that you put in when you cut your slab. Go ahead and slip and score, and we are going to attach just up to that first ridge, leaving the top free because we're going to need to mold the clay around the pony jig. Projects like this actually work really well with wet clay or clay that's a little more on the wet side. This is a stiffer piece of clay, but we're going to manage it. Like I said, I wanted to use up all my scrap. I kind of hate throwing out these usable pieces, so I like to use them for these tiny projects. As I'm giving a lot of pressure to this seam here, I want to make sure that my clay is making constant contact with the jig. You can actually feel the jig through the clay if you push hard enough, and I'll just check here at the bottom as well. Go ahead and mind your seams, make sure that you're always closing those down really well. Here comes the fun part. Now we start to paddle this clay in. I'm going to just work around, working from the back to the front. And like I said before, a softer piece of clay would make this a lot easier to do. But even with a stiffer piece of clay, you'll see that we make it work. So I just keep working the shape in, using a combination of the warmth of my hands and the paddle. Now we're going to go ahead and button up the top of that seam. You can see there's a lot of overlap because we brought that clay in with the paddle. So at this point, you just want to start cutting off small pieces as you go. And you'll get better and better at this. This takes a little bit of practice to eyeball. And you can see there where my clay is dipping a little bit lower than the jig. But like I said, we're going to add a design element to that. At this point, you'll want to pay special attention to where the bottom seam is joining the top seam because we did this in two parts. So I make sure I score really deeply in there. Even if you open up that bottom part just a little bit, it works just fine. Here's my vinegar slip. I try to make sure that no slip goes between the clay and the pony jig. If you get too much slip between, you might get a sticking situation, and we don't want that. So go ahead and use a dry, clean hand and finger. Give it a good amount of pressure. The jig gives you internal structure, so you can absolutely push and give this clay a lot of pressure without distorting it. That's what I love about our jigs. Again, you can feel the jig coming through with your hand, so you want to make sure it's on there nice and secure. I'm going to bring our banding wheel over with our little banding bat on there. Keeps our little tile in place. And we're going to leverage the jig to give us a set point to even out this top. I love this part, so satisfying. And then I'm going to come in here and just splice a little V in just to take that shorter side and make it a design element and a focal point. So I like to work with what I've got. This is letting my creativity flow. Again, this is not a necessary part of it, but I do like the effect that we got there. Taking my mini shark fin foot tool to get into those nooks and crannies, always making sure that I'm squeezing the clay tightly against the jig. We want that form to really take shape, and we want to make sure that we don't have any unnecessary gapping at that point. Okay. I will do a little bit of cleanup here with a finishing sponge, but most of my cleanup is done at leather hard. I just want to make sure that I'm doing a rough cleanup so I don't have any sharp edges here, and I want to double check my seams to make sure those are nice and locked in. So now it's time to flip our little pony jig over, and we're going to make sure that this bottom is even. You won't have as much to take off here on the bottom, but I always do whatever I do on the top, I do on the bottom just to make sure I'm nice and flat and level there. Here comes the fun part. Now we are going to remove our jig. We have a little crossbar in all of our jigs, so you're just going to kind of give it a little twist and pop it right out. If your clay is really wet, that step may take a little bit longer. Just be patient and keep rocking it back and forth, and she'll release. How beautiful is that? A beautiful form. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm covering my inside seams as well. I'll use my studio brush here with a little bit of vinegar just to go ahead and make sure that seam is nice and tight. I will dry fit the bottom next. So with our cutter that comes with a combo set, you will get a very close cut, and I just always do a dry fit first to make sure that there's not any areas that I need to bring in. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to wake up my clay a little bit. This clay's been setting out for quite some time. So we are going to slip and score, and I'm going to give even pressure all the way around the ridge before I fake my foot and pop in with the small anvil. So I'll go around and I'll just, with a firm pressure, I will push downward. I want to see the slip squeezing out. I know then that I'm giving enough pressure for my seam. We will take care of the inside at the end as well. So here's our small anvil, and I just kind of pop my little foot in there. It elevates off the table a little bit and it gives it just a little bit of extra detail, which I really love. So I'll go back through and make sure my foot is secured after I've popped in, faked my foot, because something might come loose when you're putting pressure on like that. So I like to add a little water to create a slip on my banding wheel on the tile that I used for that. And then I will swirl my piece around until it starts to grab. And then that gives me, it kind of anchors my piece for me there. So let's take care of this foot. We're going to use our mini shark fin foot tool again, and I'm going to start at a wider angle, and I'm just going to start to do a few revolutions here. You'll see I'm picking up a small amount of clay and a small amount of slip, with it, which is really important. We do not want to leave that slip hanging out there. Let me get you in closer here. So you can see I like to put in a really steep angle on my foot. It takes off excess weight. It makes it float off the table so it gives it a lighter appearance. But I also like to take a fluting tool and add a decorative foot to the bottom of my tool. I will flip my shark fin over and use that separate angle there to get in a little bit deeper. And then you just want to keep rocking your shark fin up at a steeper and steeper angle as you go. This part can be a little fussy. I really like to lay in a preliminary foot here so it's easier for me to carve this out, but you can treat this foot in any way you'd like. Next, we're going to make sure that our top is nice and round. Our regular rim cone will not fit into the smallest pony jig, but our mini rim cone does, and it's really cute and always a good excuse to use the mini. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it in there and check the clay. If I see any gapping with the clay, I'll just bring that where it's gapping. I'll push it against the rim cone, and that keeps it nice and round. I like to, as I'm building my projects, just make sure that I'm keeping the rim as round as I can all throughout the process. It just gives me a better shot at a nice round rim through glaze firing. So I'm going to remove that now and then just do a little bit more finishing work. This project, all in all, is 10 minutes or less. It really is quick and easy, and it's a really great way to use your scrap clay. We have 4 different sizes for our pony jigs, so you can go ahead and buy the set or buy one at a time. And I have also flipped these jigs over and made a mug with a more narrow bottom. So I will attach a picture of what that looks like at the end as well. And you'll also see the finished product for our pony jig. This is meant to be a decorative piece. I will put a little sprig of something in here and it will make a beautiful vase. Thanks for stopping by.